Ed Willis, hello. I have to say, I saw something on social media the other day that was quite amusing that just said there's two kind of news now, everything COVID and the NFL.
It's pretty good, yeah.
And that's really where we are. I mean, we're
Yeah.
dying for the fact that there is an actual sports happening tonight, and we won't get the commissioner hugging people on stage. But it is the NFL draft, and we do have some local content.
Yeah, oh, no, 100%. Yeah, it's funny. Just so we can step back for a minute. Like a lot of things, I used to absolutely be totally engaged in the NFL draft. That probably ended sometime around 1988.
Mm.
But so this is kind of an exciting one with the players and as you say the local flavor with Chase Claypool maybe barging into the first round, but would seems to be a top 50 pick, and we'll see where he goes.
I have to say that maybe it's because I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan that I've been much more engaged in the draft than you since 1988, just because it's always represented hope, and they have turned it into such a great show. It was supposed to be in Las Vegas this year. Of course, they're doing the virtual act, but that would have been something with the NFL supposedly returning to, or not returning, debuting in Vegas in September.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that a little bit, how the NFL draft in itself has become this show, because it does relate to Claypool, a kid from Abbotsford. Great story that wasn't on anyone's radar, sent out some videos, ended up going to a big school in Notre Dame and made his mark there.
Yeah.
But he's kind of gone from, as good as he was this year with a big school in Notre Dame, he's gone from potential middle rounds to potential first round because at the combine, he blew people away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I mean, this is really all you have to know about him. He's 6'4", weighs 230, and runs a 4.40. And there's only been one other receiver in the history of the combine with those kind of measurables, and that's Calvin Johnson, who was a pretty good player. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the standard we're using here. I mean, it still boggles my mind, and if we can get into it. My angle was writing about Jerome Pathon, who preceded. Claypool to the NFL by about 20 years, but there's some real parallels between the two. And the big one is just trying to get noticed in Canada. I think it's a little easier now. But 20 years ago, when Pathon was trying to get noticed, he had to go and play at Acadia for a year, send his film around again, and finally Washington, invited him, and he walked on, ended up getting a scholarship, and played 8 years in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, there was real interest in Claypool, and I kept looking at him, and I kept thinking of DK Metcalf. The receiver Seattle drafted, and very similar, kind of similar size, that kind of new generation of that Hercules as wide receiver. And Metcalf fell to the second round of Seattle. And it looks like they hit a home run there. So I just wonder if Claypool, if he just because of that, Claypool might go a little earlier than expected.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so funny you reference Pathon because at the time I was a football
Yeah.
writer for the province, and they ended up sending me to Indianapolis for training camp and the first game. Now, that just also happened to be the first game of Peyton Manning, who was chosen with the first overall pick, and then
Yeah.
Pathon was the first in the second round. So this pairing, you got this great young wide receiver who's going to be with this great young quarterback. Now, of course, Marvin Harrison was also there,
Ah,
not a bad
yes.
player.
Yeah.
But there have been so few players. We've seen guys like Steve Nash, and frankly, lately, a lot of good Canadian players in the NBA. Obviously, we know about the
Mm.
baseball legacy. The NFL is the one nut that really, especially in BC, they haven't cracked. There's been Pathon. Danny Watkins was a first round pick, kind of
Yeah.
flamed out with the Eagles. A couple of later round guys who've made it, like Rob Meyer from West Van, who played D line with the Jaguars for many years. But this is a real chance for a guy to, the guy he needs to be drafted first. But Claypool, certainly, when you look at his stats and, as you said, his physicality, he has a chance to not just play in the NFL, but to actually be something.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, and it's kind of it's been sporadic, it's been incremental over the years. There's a couple of years where they'll have 3, 4 Canadians drafted. Some years where they're all going the free agent route. So I just wonder if this is this maybe the start of something. I don't really know. It's this interests me though that if Claypool goes, I think I can't remember I'm sorry, I'm blanking out on the other receiver. Anyways, Pathon is the highest.
Yeah.
Canadian receiver to go. So Claypool figures to be, the highest. Whether he goes before where Pathon went, it goes after. He figures, to fit in there somewhere. But there's also the Gallimore kid. There's a quarterback from Ohio. There's a couple of others. It could be five Canadian players taken in this round. And you're right, just given the way the NBA has evolved over the last couple of years, you just wonder if it's going to be easier. I know it was easier for Claypool than it was for Jerome Pathon. I just wonder if going forward, more Canadian kids will be getting longer looks.
And man, you just look at the difference, and we've talked about this over the years, the difference between the CFL and the NFL in talent. Maybe not that big, because we've seen CFLers go down there and have an impact. We've seen NFLers come up here and not have an impact. But financially, the difference between being able, and I know there's a kid out of UBC or out of SFU as well, JJ Adams is going to write about him, who has a chance to go in the later rounds or maybe be a free agent. But just to get on an NFL roster makes just such a massive difference to these guys.
Oh, sure. You can make more on an NFL practice roster. I think before I say that, I should really think about that. But I know you can make up to 90,000 US just being on a practice roster in the NFL, which, is usually more. Now, there's career issues involved there. There's playing time. There's building a resume. There's all those considerations. But there's a reason why, they call it going through the NFL rinse cycle, where a guy will get cut and then he'll wait around. Instead of like charging right to Canada, he'll wait around to see if there's going to be an opportunity on another practice roster or another practice roster or another practice roster. I mean, Geroy Simon got cut somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 times in his career, but he always ended up falling on a place before he ended up going. I think he went to Winnipeg first and then landed with the Lions. So there's a reason those guys will always hang around until the NFL dream is squashed out of their system irrevocably.
Yeah, and you look at actually if they end up, they've approved this new format that goes to more games, they're going to need more players. That's just the way it is when players get injured. Switch gears a little bit and let's talk a little bit about hockey. Some news came this morning, actually, as the wind kicks up. Sorry about that. It's blasting through the microphone. Again, we're fighting for space here. The outdoor studio mercifully was open for the afternoon. But let's talk about hockey for a second. Jason Kenney, Premier of Alberta, said today that he had heard from Gary Bettman about this plan to house games in Edmonton. And I know, as much as I still can't wrap my head over the logistics of this going ahead, they do seem to be settling on this plan where you would have sort of one city that would host games for each division or for each conference, or how it works. Like, are you any more hopeful that this is going to happen?
Well, I kind of really, ever since Dr. Fauci made that very public statement that he can see sports leagues, it's kind of been pointing this way. For me, I don't know, optimistic, pessimistic, who knows what those words mean in this world. All I know is there is a lot of momentum, and the NHL wants the message out that they're going to be open for business sometime in like either late June or early July. And when Wayne Gretzky says it, and when Gary Bettman says it publicly, and there was a report out from Larry Brooks of the New York Post that some NHL teams are telling their players to get ready to assemble around May 15th, and they're going to start informal workouts. So, I mean, that's 3 weeks from now. I mean, it's going fast, and again, it doesn't really fit with what a lot of the messages coming from the Public Health Authority, but they just seem bound and determined to squeeze this in one way or the other. And I don't know, how do you turn this back now? I guess they can always fall back on it's out of our hands. It was, the health authority made us do it, but geez, they're going to look awfully foolish if they have to pull the plug on this now.
Well, that's never happened, has it?